Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable. Forbes India and ServiceNow present the COO Collective.
Hello and welcome to this very special series. It's a thought leadership series known as the COO Collective, brought to you by Forbes India in association with ServiceNow. I'm your host, Paramita Chatterjee. Now today we'll be talking about enhancing customer experience as part of the theme of this series today, where we want to find out from companies who come from diverse verticals about what their customer experience journey has been like, especially in today's increasingly digitized world and also highly competitive markets as well. And we've got with us some of the leading luminaries from their industry here on the show today. So let me not waste any time and introduce them to you. Starting with Om Manchanda, who's the Managing Director of Dr. Lal Path Labs. Venugopal Arkat, who is Senior Director at ServiceNow India. Anil Vinayak, Group COO at Fortis Healthcare. And Rishi Mehta, President and CEO of Basil. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Now, as I said, this is a thought leadership series where we really want to understand from top leadership today about how they are facing the challenges of today's competitive world from a strategy as well as an operational point of view using the new digital tools. Om, let me start with you. Dr. Lal Path Labs is really a legacy brand, but that brings with it challenges. And at the same time, you have a customer whom you already know or have been in touch with, and there's a fair bit of trust element as well. What's been your customer experience like, especially in this new digital or phygital world?
So we have broadly three ways we get our customers into our system. One is they come from various hospitals and other smaller labs, because these small labs, they outsource samples to us. That's one way of getting it. Other is we have a lot of franchisee collection centers. Patients go there, give their samples, and then samples come to us in the lab. And third is when patients directly walk into our labs. Now, all these three channels of collections actually were not connected earlier. So if you look at from a legacy way of working, they were actually getting registered as the samples hit our labs. Now, earlier, one transaction was a complete sort of a activity in itself, but in today's world, you can't afford that. You need to connect multiple visits. And there are broadly two areas where we are looking at. One is clinical excellence, and other is the convenience dimension. I think a lot of focus in the recent past has gone on convenience. Patients are looking for, let's say if I walk into a hospital, I walk into a collection center, you don't need to ask me the entire demographics all over again. One phone number should be enough, or email ID should be enough. I think the first challenge for us has been to have one view of the customer across all channels of collection.
Indeed, and we are here to talk about how companies such as yours, working across various departments, silos, distribution patterns.
So I think if I were to look at one thing which customers look at is that, can you get my data the moment I give you one identifier and anywhere I go? That's the first requirement. Second requirement of the customer is that I have been to your labs for so many times and for the last so many years. Can I have all the reports in one place? When I see a doctor, sometimes they are looking for all the previous reports. So can you give me on the app or on website all the reports together? So essentially that's possible when we are able to have one view of the customer and are able to merge all the previous data points into one visit.
Indeed, and we want to find out more about your journey, but let me turn to the other big player in the healthcare space, and we've got Fortis Healthcare, the Group COO with us. So Anil Vinayak, would you identify with some of those challenges, because you've also had quite a legacy?
So the first challenge, of course, like you said, was how to put all the customer data together so at least you are the same, whether you go to Bangalore or you go to a hospital in Noida or wherever. So that piece, to a large degree, we have been able to solve for. The second question from the patient perspective, though, is also in healthcare. Can you facilitate my journey? Can you make it easier for me to interact with you? And I think that's not so much a challenge when it's labs. But when you look at a hospital and the many different types of interactions you may have, that complicates the whole journey quite a bit. And therefore, the second priority for us has been around that. How can we facilitate the entire journey and the interaction of the patient with various touch points in the hospital? The third aspect is something that we are also looking to deal with, which is, can I use this information, or can I use the many pieces of information in the hospital to make it easier for clinicians and doctors to provide excellent care to the doctor, to the patient? In this age of multidisciplinary problems, right, that becomes an imperative, and that's something that we are very focused on as we speak.
Right. So what I'm hearing is from both of you, I mean, the priority remains the same, which is to really integrate all the data coming from various sources, except you're saying your challenges are perhaps greater. I'll get a reaction from you, Om, because your touch points are more. But if we talk about multiple touch points, I think it cannot get crazier than an airport. And these days, airports are very stressful experiences. You're representing Basil. Tell us a little bit about, what your company does and how you're really helping to resolve what's currently a fairly nightmarish customer experience for most, passengers in airports.
Correct. So yes, definitely airports are, public venues, if you would, especially for the passengers who are coming in. But you have a lot of other stakeholders also, security. Then there are a lot of other bodies, who are operating at the airport, airlines, and few more, operations, and many more. The challenge that becomes is any customer, any passenger that walks in, they want to go through certain touch points quick so that they can either get to the lounge or the retail area as seamlessly and as fast as possible. So if I can put myself in the customer's shoes. So we run through very similar challenges, if I can abstract out, which means, I have to study the data at every touch point that customer, when he walks into the airport, whether it's coming into the entry gate, going through security, going to the kiosks, then basically later on even into the queues that goes through retail.
Because you don't just have like one sort of airport operator, you have the security force, which is a different entity altogether, and then of course the private players who are already there. I mean, is integrating for you all that data really the biggest challenge, would you say?
So the challenge is one, definitely we are providing, just a step back, we are providing end-to-end technology solutions for the airports. The challenge that becomes to us is how do you use the data in a one meaningful manner, and second, you have to honor the privacy part of the data also, because that's a challenge that's plaguing everybody, including us. I just cannot say, this is how I'm tracking Dr. Om inside the airport. So I have to do it very intelligently and still offer him the services that he would need.
And Dr. Om can't be tracking my data as well.
Yes.
The way he wants, yeah.
So we have to anonymize the data. I have to then, track the data at an aggregate level so that then I can conceive of services that he would truly value. So I have to now combine anonymity with basically personalization. So that becomes a big challenge, to start to build on. But we are on that journey. And I think you can now imagine, the shape of technology and the services that will start to roll out in the.
No, I think it's a dichotomy that's, it seems like a huge challenge. But let me turn to Venu now, because, anonymity, yet personalization, yet you want integration of all this data. I mean, how do you respond to some of the challenges that we're hearing from our panelists today?
Sure. Thank you very much. I think what you hear now is about data, and data. And data is one of those personal things that I love to talk about, because you can create meanings out of it, you create insights out of it, you can take decisions out of it, but it's secure and safe. So if you have to dissect this data into a different ways to make these possible, there need to be a way to look at model itself. We talked about siloed data, which are called islands of data coming from different technologies, different sources. The second is about data quality, because garbage in, garbage out. How do we determine the data quality in terms of availability of the data, the relationship of the data to an outcome or a service being provided, and the data that should not be there, should not be there. Right. Last but not the least, data safe and secure. Most of us here are from a regulated environment. How do we protect those data in making those decisions possible. We are working with healthcare service providers in terms of how do we make patient experience better and improve clinicians' productivity so that their decisions can happen much more faster.
Forbes India and ServiceNow present the COO Collective. Forbes India and ServiceNow present the COO Collective.
Healthcare staff, whether it is doctors or even the medical, the support staff which is there, I mean, would you say, was that a very big challenge to bring them, everybody on to a common health platform wherein they see the value of really, integrating themselves to offer that customer that seamless experience?
So first of all, we found that the best way to do that is to make them part of the solutioning of how this is to be designed. And always keeping in mind that while we are serving the patient, we are also serving the doctor and our own staff. So as an example, when we launched a patient app, we simultaneously launched a doctor app, which was addressing the real gaps that doctors felt they had in being able to provide better clinical care. So by doing that, we automatically got acceptance from the doctor's side. On the other patient side, of course, we looked at what are the major pain points that they're going through. And by addressing them and making it clear to our employees that we were addressing some real pain points that they were getting the flack for a lot of the times, right? The acceptance from employees came about as well. Today, the biggest ambassadors for promoting my app are my own employees. So they teach the patient and they know that by self-serving, they're going to remove the problem of the patient for life. So it's become that they've become the ambassadors of the technology adoption of the company. And certainly it's a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. You can't change 4 tires of a moving vehicle, right? So it is also modular, and everybody knows that it's a journey that they're on, and we're all part of it together.
Indeed. And as you said, and Rishi, you also said that keep some of the legacy systems going while you're making this transition and make your employees part of that experience. But, what about the value that technology brings? Because technology can be very confusing. It's changing by the minute, by the hour. And sometimes a lot of companies say, listen, we've invested so much of money. We're not sure if it's the right solution. And honestly, there have been some recent studies which have shown that I think just about a quarter of companies are actually seeing that positive return on investment in terms of some of their investments into technology.
Last 2 years needed every company to accelerate investments because touch had to become touchless. So in that context, what's more important is looking at experience, as you mentioned, into 3 different dimensions or a unified dimension of these 3. We call it as total experience, a customer experience, an employee experience, and the technology experience put together. These are all interrelated but weaved in terms of providing a total experience to an outcome possible. The outcome must be maybe in terms of a customer being happy, on one side, in the hospital scenario, a patient experience, or somebody who's going to cater to going there, or an airport, a passenger. On the employee experience, the people who are serving, how do we serve and provide all those possibilities in front of them so that they can take decisions for solving a problem on one end, but also enriching in terms of upselling any other possibilities for them that they need itself. Last but not the least, technology is the backbone of how the enterprise runs. The decisions have to be taken by technologies. And that's where the entire spinal cord of connecting all these 3 makes you to convert into a total experience. How do you bring all of these three things together is the magic behind the whole thing.
Anil, how are you seeing technology? What role is it playing in your organization?
So technology is an enabler of service, enabler of better quality of work, enabler of better clinical outcomes. And over time, it can expand the entire care to before and after the episode, right? So that's the possibility. Now, I think the way it will be realized, though, is by technocrats or technology solution providers working very closely with the hospitals or the healthcare providers so that they arrive at the real pain points, like you said. What are you trying to solve and what's the best way to solve it? Because working in silos, that will not happen to the same degree. And we've seen some of that with some of the largest technology players not being able to come up with much, right? So, and at the same time, healthcare side has been probably slow to adopt technology as well. So if these two come together in some form and fashion,
Why do you think that is? Why has healthcare been slow?
because I think it's a pretty complex journey, right? If you look at healthcare, the number of interactions is incredibly high, and the number of touch points that deliver service are also very high. Yeah? So if you look at all of those, are you able to really add value to a large section of those over time?
I think you're asking the question that a lot of companies are asking, and not just in healthcare. Venu, how do you respond to that?
See, that's why it's important to step back and understand the process behind it, and that's where in many different ways it's expressed as outcomes. These process steps to deliver outcomes. If you step back and understand the process, it's all about a persona, it's about collaboration between different and an outcome realized out of it. It could be in ambulance services, it could be an insurance provider, it could be a field person collecting, but this persona is one persona which could be a critical patient or a critical person or a VIP traveler in many different ways. If you define this persona, the process steps associated with that, the collaboration, connecting dots, and the outcome need to be delivered. Definitely there is a cycle time associated with it. There is a process that can be optimized. And technology plays an important role, and that's what we've been able to do in terms of converting these touch points into touchless points.
Right, because Rishi, would you say, I mean, since you've got a wealth of experience, not just in airports, but otherwise as well, you think the ones who are left on the battlefield are going to be the ones who are able to really use analytics effectively? Because the deluge of data is there, but utilizing that analytics, insight, how many companies are actually able to do it successfully and connect it with their customers, give it back in terms of greater customer experience?
I feel we are in the nascent stages of the journey to basically apply the insights that we get out of the data towards the customers. Because understanding customer has been a very age-old problem, as we all know, across the businesses. It has not been an easy. And I'll just mention a few more points around it. Even the technologists who are starting out these startups, they are going through the motions of design, build, sell. Okay? But if you look at other technologists who are they are going in a slightly different motion when they do the startups. They do sell, design, build, sell. First sell is, those technologists team is working with the businesses, customer segments, and the other market verticals to see if there is a fitment for their idea or not. They sell their concept, they sell their idea, they sell the prototype to see if there is a take by the business team or the customers. And then they go through the motion of design, build, and eventual sell. So those are the startup journeys, who have been a little bit more successful. And the way it ties up with the whole insight and analytics, the very first motion of sell they start doing of the concept, these technologies and the startups who are very tech oriented, they actually learn a lot as they're pitching to the customer segments, learning from them. They derive insights which go back into their products, which go back into the design. It's a very iterative process they follow initially. And that's why I'm saying, we are in the nascent stages, I feel, of the journey of applying our insights and analytics.
So what's the secret sauce, Venu? What's the secret sauce that makes it right, where they're able to use that analytics back into refining and improving the customer experience?
There's one important thing that's going to strike all of us is the 5G, right? 5G is going to transform the entire business the way we operate today, tomorrow, and thereafter. It's going to change the whole new experience.
How?
The kind of data that's possible, the possibilities that we are talking about, a patient and a doctor's experience from wherever possible. These are things that you'll be able to see the whole new business model changing. With this advent of inclusions, how are we able to understand this phrase called machine mate? The machine and the man working together to make an outcome possible. This requires reimagination, redesigning of platforms. The second is about the blockchain, because every step you take, it has to be a step that is leaving behind an audit trail, which is transparent. Trust is the currency of the new economy. How do we ensure that these regulated markets, regulator can see these regulations and the data that is flowing, and thereafter deciding in terms of what it is. Analytics is an easily spoken word, but there is an algorithm behind it. Behind the algorithm is a statistical model behind it. every statistical model has relevance.
You know, just sitting here, my head is spinning. It's because, you know, I was having a conversation with somebody else, again from the technology world, and he was telling me that just machine learning and blockchain itself, very few companies are actually able to understand the value and really mine it effectively. So the future is about 5G, but Om, tell us about how you're seeing the future, because we're talking about the phygital world now, the hybrid world. People still want that physical touch and feel and interaction, and you'll have to have a mix of the two as a company.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point you make, and it's again often debated subject in healthcare, that can everything move digital. And I think during COVID times, we had teleconsultations and home collections, and I think everybody was writing off some of these old business models. And as I see now, probably customers or patients are going back to the old ways of working. And I think it's, my personal experience is that in healthcare, a face-to-face interaction is also a therapy. It may just not be the medicine alone. And and I can talk about diagnostics, and when the phlebotomist goes and collects a blood sample, a little bit of interaction between the phlebotomist and the patient, we don't realize there's a value of that. I think to me that piece is very, very important.
Right, so that's how the world is going to look. A bit of the physical, more of the virtual, perhaps with the advent of 5G. But at the end of the day, this COO Collective series has come up with the conclusion that especially when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to airports, it's not really about the technology, but it's about understanding at the very end what the customer wants, and their technology can be a huge enabler. Thank you so much to all my panelists for making the time and for joining us. And thank you to our viewers as well for tuning in today for this special discussion.
Forbes India and ServiceNow present the COO Collective.
Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.